All right, to talk about the ongoing disaster in East Palestine, Ohio, we're joined now by Matthew Weaver, who is a 28-year railroader, member of the BMW ED. He's also the elected legislative director in Ohio for the union. Matthew, thank you so much for joining us.
Good afternoon. Thank you for the opportunity to join you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, you got it. And so, one of the things that I've seen being discussed in political circles in relation to this disaster, I've seen a lot of people saying, "Look, this doesn't actually have anything to do with PSR, with precision scheduled railroading. So you guys are out there just trying to shoehorn everything in to this issue, that we've talked about a lot on this show. They're saying, but it doesn't fit. The facts of the case just don't line up. It has nothing to do with why there was this disaster." I wanted to get it from your perspective as a railroader. What do you think were some of the kind of general structural causes that led to a situation where something like this could happen?
Well, it would be false for me to speculate on the real cause until the NTSB report comes out. But I can tell you from discussing with machinists and car shop workers that the inspections have been rushed. It used to be 2 guys working 4 to 5 minutes per car to inspect a car for departure. Now it's 1 guy, 90 seconds or less. So that's time involved in inspecting those axles, those journals, those bearings, and all other components of the rail car.
Now, on the side of government, that's another big question. There's been a lot of sort of back and forth within Ohio about who might bear responsibility for lax standards, and then the fallout is another question entirely. What can you tell us about the government sort of oversight of the railways in Ohio and how that could have potentially related to what we're seeing unfold in East Palestine?
Well, I can discuss, many articles that we've seen about railroad lobbyists, campaign finance, watching big money in this industry try to skirt laws, limit laws, delay enforcement, and that's kind of the problem. The braking systems are Civil War era. This is an old industry, but there are some improvements that can be made to avoid things like this.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about that, because it seems like there are kind of 2 ways that you could kind of from an industry perspective go about making it less likely that this is going to happen. One would be the one that you alluded to, which is allow mechanics who are inspecting the trains more time. So that they can actually inspect it, because as there's been some reporting that this had something to do with a busted axle. If you're underneath the train, you only have 90 seconds, you might not have enough time, to spot the problem that is going to lead to an axle breaking. The second is the other thing you alluded to, better braking systems, and this to basically modernize this Civil War this post-Civil War technology that we've been relying on. So what would it take to get us to a place where they're actually implementing these braking systems on trains that are carrying these hazardous materials?
It would take an investment in the infrastructure. I mean, electronic braking, they have the technology out there. They did improve tankers. The problem is that would upset the shareholders in an industry with skyrocketing profit margins that are, they're screaming to work for a 55% operating ratio when you're talking food industry working at 90%. So it's all about profit over people, and we depend on the regulators to regulate and ensure safety, and that's where I believe we're going to find a failure here.
There were a lot of comparisons I'm sure you've seen of people saying, why does small town Ohio look like Chernobyl in the past week or two? And I want to ask a question that maybe the answer we don't really want to know because it's frightening. But from your perspective as somebody with a lot of insight into this, just across the board, what other kinds of safety issues that are not being sort of adequately attended to either on the corporate side or on the government side exist in your mind? Are there potential crises looming that sort of, again, as somebody with insight into this, keep you up at night, knowing the lapsed standards are out there?
Well, I mean, from my perspective, from the maintenance of way perspective, I think it's deferred maintenance. You put a Band-Aid on a broken leg. We don't fix things till they break. Preventive maintenance often seems to be lacking because they even call us maintenance in the way instead of maintenance of way. But this is not. This is mechanical, as far as I know, and it sounds like a hot bearing, hot journal, a hot box detector caught, but it was too late. I get the impression that this ran for 20 miles without those conditions. So perhaps we need more detectors. We need to address these issues.
Right, and you've been, as you said, a railroader for 28 years now. How have you seen the industry change in that amount of time? Well, in other words, like what were inspections looking like before? What was maintenance looking like before?
We've lost 30% of our manpower of rail labor in the last 8-9 years. They're just not. The numbers aren't there. The manpower's not there to do the work. There's something going on with having conductors inspect the cars or inspect the connections with the hoses. I don't know all the details on that. And much of this is mechanical rather than engineering. And I work for the engineering department.
And since we're talking to a national and international audience, I want to ask just a pretty basic question. Is there anything you wish people understood about the industry that, as it's come into the sort of front of our political discourse, our discourse in general, with the strike last year, and now again with this insane story out of Ohio, is there anything you wish people understood, or you think maybe they misunderstand about the industry?
I believe that the public doesn't understand how powerful the industry is, how the subsidies the railroads got for building across the country, and the power they have. I testified for the Ohio House Transportation Committee about crossing safety and two-man crew, and there were 7 lobbyists in the back of the room listening in on what I was having to say. It's a very powerful industry.
I was actually just going to ask you about that, because as the legislative director for your union in Ohio, what is it like when you go to the state capitol? I mean, what are you up against there, and how hard is it for you to get a hearing in the halls of power in Ohio?
It seems very difficult. We've been trying for multiple years to get a crossing safety bill in that simply adds "and other on-track equipment" the laws, so that the public acknowledges that we have track equipment, we have inspectors' trucks, we have there's more than just trains on the tracks, and we failed at that in Ohio. I believe 31 states have a crossing safety bill for that purpose, but not Ohio. So it's very difficult because the money the railroads have is tremendous.
Yeah, and as you say, you can't just fix things when they're broken.
Right. And we had Devin Mance, a railroader from North Dakota, on earlier, and he was mentioning he also does maintenance away, and one of the things he does, he's driving basically a big pickup truck over the tracks, looking for flaws, kind of making sure that things are running so the train can move over smoothly. So is that the kind of crossing that you mean, that you're trying to make sure that as a pickup truck is driving along the tracks, that you're not going to get slammed by a big rig coming in the other direction?
Yes. Often our trucks, our on-track equipment, does not follow the tracks, so the gates don't go down. I was putting a crane or a boom truck on the tracks in Toledo some years ago, and I had to jump up on the high rail gear, up on the bumper, because I was almost hit because somebody not paying attention. The gates weren't down. I had the flashers on, but it's a dangerous scenario at the crossings, and we have had people die in those instances.
Right, and it's a public safety
really
danger
helpful
too.
Perspective.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, right. And what do you hear when you talk to lawmakers and say, hey, can you just add this? Like, what is the railroad's pushback? What is the lawmakers' problem with? It seems to me that should be the bare minimum.
And in that circumstance, it is difficult for me to comprehend because it would save the railroad's liability as well, because it puts more emphasis on public responsibility to acknowledge that there's more than trains on the tracks. But it seems like the carriers are always pushing back against the unions. And this is a real safety issue.
Well, and one last question from me is just in the last week or so, do you sense a different maybe sentiment arising among regulators and maybe even the companies as they reckon with the incredible destruction and the scale of the problem that was caused in Ohio? Do you sense that maybe this is an opening for real change, or do you sense maybe more of a cover-up in motion or an attempt to just sort of paper it over, put a giant Band-Aid on it, and keep on moving?
I think it's a very good opportunity to strike while the iron's hot and get media attention. I've had a lot of interviews. We've talked to a lot of people. Railroad Workers United, railroadworkersunited.org is probably how you got my contact info. And they've had a media committee that's been out in droves, and we have to keep the attention. I do know a big issue on bargaining was the attendance policy, and at least 4 unions in the last 10 days have gotten sick days at CSX. And that's a promising step forward, and there were no concessions in getting that.
Yeah, I think that's important for people to understand, because when you wage a public fight and you raise national attention on an issue, even if you don't win the ultimate victory in the Senate, for instance, sometimes it puts so much pressure that you end up winning anyway. So how did you end up with those sick days through your railroad?
Honestly, I give a lot of credit to the new CEO who came from Ford. I met him twice. On the second time I met him, I told him that I forgot to mention that now that he's the CEO, perhaps he can talk to other CEOs from the Class 1 railroads and get us sick days. He said, Matt, that's a good idea. I don't believe it'll happen in this round of bargaining, but I'll work on it. And he's leading by example. So you don't see me often giving credit to company officials, but I appreciate that, that we have paid sick days now.
Right, and it's not the kind of thing they're going to do if they're not pressured. Right, and so
correct.
Right. Well, Matthew, I really appreciate you joining, and be safe out there.
Thank you, and it's not a thing they're going to do without attention. So I appreciate the media attention. You guys are really helping us get the word out there, because the public doesn't know. No, people thought we had sick days, and we had 0 until last week.
Right. Yeah. It's really crucial. It's really crucial. So.
Thanks so much, Matthew.
Thanks, you guys. I appreciate the opportunity.
Hey guys, ready or not, 2024 is fully upon us now, and Soccer and I have been brainstorming ways that we can really up our game for this critical election.
Yeah, we rely on our premium subs to expand our coverage, to add staff, to upgrade the studio. We just want to give you the best independent coverage of this election, which is possible. So if you can help us out, become a premium subscriber today, breakingpoints.com, or the link is down here in the description video. It really means the world to us, and if you like what we're all about, this is the best possible way to keep us 100% independent, working only for you.